Welcome to season 2 of the Unitrans podcast. Throughout the season, we'll be having conversations about growth, leadership, and real-world logistics across Africa. Joining me today is Head of Safety, Tracy van Halstingen, and Safety Executive, Leonard Maluleka. Please tell us a bit about yourselves, and we look forward to having a conversation around safety as a mindset rather than a rule book. So we look forward to hearing about your roles and as well all about safety.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the welcome. So Tracy van Halstingen, as you said, I'm the head of SHEC for Unitrans Africa. And what we do predominantly, we're the team that looks after the team that looks after others. So we look after safety, health, environment, risk, and quality.
Amazing.
Yes. That's okay. Leonard Maluleka, as you said, overall executive for SHEC, also looking after operational risk and security and sustainability for groups. I think our job is more about making sure that people come to the workplace safe, they work safely, and go home safe.
Amazing. So as we know, safety is very, very crucial in a business such as yours. So we'd like to ask you the question, when we talk about road safety and fleet safety in Africa today, what are the real risks that worry you most beyond legislation and audits?
Where do we start? So in terms of hazards and risks, I think the biggest risk for us is falling on human behavior. We're an organization that has fleet all over Africa. So 24/7, 365, we have moving parts. So in terms of human behavior, we have fatigue. We also have alcohol consumption. We have speeding and impatience, which is really a huge contributor to incidents and accidents that we see. Also in terms of infrastructure, because we operate through Africa, there's various types of infrastructure available. And as we see adverse weather conditions changing, we see a lot of maintenance that's required, a lot of damages that are taking place. In terms of that, also we look at topics such as organizational complexities as well as demands. We know the customer needs their goods and services, so that's what we need to do. Of course, we need to do that safely. Also, when we look at the distances that we're traveling, we look at the commodities that we're transporting, also dangerous goods, livestock in terms of chickens. There's a whole range of different commodities. And particularly when we look at vehicle maintenance, we also look at technology gaps, and all this requires ongoing risk management strategies, which simply stretches far beyond just a compliance obligation.
Very intricate indeed, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Then, what are your thoughts?
One other risk maybe that Tracy didn't mention is on the security front, where if you're within the African context, you know, your long overhauls, trips that are taking long, where you see a driver post 24 hours, etc. There's the security also of our drivers that are on the road, not only the drivers, but the high moving goods that we are moving throughout the continent. So security has also picked up. We have seen recently within the KZN, where if trucks are on the robots or traffic lights, guys just jump onto the truck, still cables from the truck, which is currently on high, but local authorities are working on that. But there is also those sporadic protests or service delivery protests or any other protests that we have that can also hinder in terms of from a security perspective, not only putting our life of our driver at stake, but also the community, because it's a vice versa. So we do also have those challenges in security that we also see.
For sure. And one thing we do see that's on the increase is road rage.
Yeah.
Definitely a concern.
A couple of those currently off-road rage issues. And it's more stemming from people not being patient on our roads. And also we can see from the spikes that we have on weekends, where there's a lot of movement during after hours. And also another part which is that also being talked about, it's drinking and driving. That's also quite important that that's being on the spike. So we're also seeing those, yeah.
Very interesting. Your portfolio must be so hectic. I can imagine you have to deal with quite a lot of intricacies on your side. But let's talk a little bit about zero harm. Many organizations talk about this topic, zero harm. What does that actually look like in day-to-day decisions and behaviors for drivers and frontline teams?
So zero harm, for me, it's a commitment. It's not a KPI. It's a commitment that events are prevented. If you have the right layers of control, they can be preventable. But this also stems from behavior. You need to have the right behavior. You need to have the right competency and training. You need to have the right risk controls to make sure that you manage any other risk that might occur. It's one of those philosophies that is mainly used within the industry, but we are trying to push for continuous improvement.
Good.
From each and every incident that occur, from any other is that okay, what are the lessons learned from it, and how can you make sure that that incident will never occur again? By continuously improving, we're putting controls that will make sure that that incident never happens, but also according to the zero harm that we want to get to.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And as Leonard said, definitely not a KPI. I also think it's a creation of culture of care. Absolutely. It's about our people. It's about us doing the best and the best interest of the community in which we operate, see for our customers as well, but absolutely for our people.
On that note, actually, how do you shift from safety being something that's enforced to something that's owned by people who are under pressure? They've got tight deadlines, they've got long distances to travel. I'm sure it must not be easy.
Yeah, very difficult, a difficult requirement. And in terms of the industry we're in, one decision can cost a life. So it's absolutely critical that enforcement moves to ownership.
Yeah.
And I think there's three things there. Making safety personal, making safety practical, and then also supporting safety. I don't think people inherently don't want to follow rules. I think they have pressures of operations, of deadlines, of distances. So they often feel like that they have to make those decisions, which is over and above the safety requirements. So it's critical, it's key that management, senior leadership, supervisors are always saying safety is a non-negotiable and living that. And in terms of that as well, I think once your employees are part of your safety solution, once they understand what the concerns are and you bring them in to consult and to discuss, they come out with the solutions. I think that's when the ownership really happens. I think that's where the magic is, which is so important, especially for a diverse organization like us.
That's right.
We have, 10,000 employees, so many different industries, so many moving parts, as we've said. But lastly, supportive. And I think if you can make realistic scheduling, if you have good planning, if you have ongoing training and awareness, if you have reliable vehicles, I think all of these together will support your employees to make better, safer decisions, especially when they're under pressure.
So on our side, we can see that there's a lot of continuous work that needs to happen because driver training is often treated as a once-off intervention. So how does continuous training influence behavior and decision-making in real operating situations?
So in real life operations, there's so many things that are moving at the same time. Training is quite important because by not only repeating the training, you actually embedding the good qualities of what and how the work should be done, or the task that the individual is actually doing. And it's said that in adults, the more you repeat something, the more you learn and the more it becomes part of your psyche. Mm-hmm. So by ongoing repetition of training, we're making sure that we're enforcing the good behaviors. We're making sure that the competency is there. And by slowly practicing and making sure that it's being repeated, that will stick to the individuals to make sure that now safety is just becoming what they are doing every day. It's not now an enforcement that it is enforced for them to be doing. So continuous training is quite critical importance, not only just for the competency, but also to making sure that the enforcement of good behaviors that we need from our employees.
So from a technological perspective, we know that technology plays a huge role when it comes to road safety. Where does it genuinely help, and where does human judgment still matter most?
So here we have a real opportunity. And in terms of our technology that we have, we've seen leaps and strides, especially in the last couple of years. I also think it's about what you're measuring and what you're monitoring. Just getting a whole source of data does nothing to the organization. But if you start looking at risk-based data, you could really start looking at efficiencies in turnaround times. You can look at breakdown times, even idling and all of that. So there's a whole lot to technology that I don't even think we've reached the iceberg yet. And in terms of risk management, we manage by exception. So our vehicles go out on the road, we can see exactly where they are, we can see if they've stopped too long somewhere, we can see if they've stopped where they shouldn't have stopped, and that's all through an exception process, which is really great. But it's constant eyes on screen, right? If you've got a vehicle out there, but the real beauty in terms of that is our drivers are not alone. When they go out into their cabs, we have access to see what they see. So when there are risk issues, when there are situations, we can support them. We have a whole risk team, a whole center that's able to give breakdown support, who can give risk assistance, anything that they, even medical support. And that's critical in terms of the technology.
Thank you so much for that a very insightful input. But if you look at now safety as a whole, we don't want to look at it as a rule book. I'm sure you guys can agree. It's rather a mindset. So what happens for mental models would you say truly differentiate safe teams from unsafe teams?
I think the differentiator of safe teams is they are living safety, where safety is not forced onto them, but now the safety is part of life and also part of the working environment. We try to make sure that whenever you come to any Unitrans facility, it becomes a safety enclave. You forget about the rules outside. When you come into any Unitrans facility, you need to live within the rules of Unitrans. And those rules are based on making sure that each and every activity that we do is being done safely. E.g., if you need to be doing that requires a permit, there's processes that you need to go through before you obtain the permit and declare it safe so that you can do the work. So in terms of that, it's more about making sure that people live the culture of being safe. And by the culture of being safe, that also talks to your continuous improvement and so the zero harm. The more repetitive of people using being safe, and the more training that they get by being safe, the better they actually live the safety mindset. E.g., you have to start every week doing a continuous risk assessment or a task-based risk assessment, where you now identify what are the potential hazards that can stem from this particular task to how do you control it. It makes people think about it and make sure that you don't get to a point where you can injure yourself. Similarly, our drivers, before they go on any trip, pre-task or a pre-trip checklist is being done. This is not just being done to check as a checklist, but you're doing it just to make sure that you don't find any risks for yourself on the road where you find a flat tire that you didn't check, etc. So it's more about making sure that safety becomes a way of living and the way of working.
I love that. And could you actually share, for instance, an example or a moment where a driver, a mentor, or frontline team illustrated what safe decision-making actually looked like in a real-life scenario, where they were under pressure or anything like that?
Tracy?
So we see this every day. We review footage, particularly where there's harsh braking, potential collisions, following distance issues, failure to keep out, and we see it every single day. So all of that training, all of that mindset shift, all of that focus is what our drivers are outputting. So when they go out into the communities, when they go onto the public roads, that's what they're doing, and that's the benefit. A near collision is obviously better than a collision, and that's what we want to see. We want to see fast responses. We want to be able to see that we've got defensive driving techniques that are really implemented on the road, because we want to obviously save lives. We don't want to harm communities in which we operate, and also we don't want to we just don't want to do that.
On my side, not really a scenario, but something that we always see where employees stop work that's unsafe or unsafe behavior. Whenever you have, you're passing by and employees are working on any task and you see that they might either not wearing a full PPE related to the task, or there's a risk of maybe someone falling, or the area is not called off, or they are lifting, our guys to stop work and have a discussion with those particular individuals to make sure that they make the work area safe. And there's another behavior that is also quite good to see, because your employees are powered to actually stop an unsafe work from becoming an incident. And we do have a lot of that, where if you are walking and you see someone doing anything unsafe, you have the ability to stop them and make sure that they work safely.
Very interesting. Now, when it comes to data, we know that the issue of real-time data, or not the issue rather, but the subject of real-time data was brought up earlier on. But how are organizations using real-time data and behavioral insights to support safer decision-making before incidents occur?
So in terms of the data we collect, there's data streaming 24/7. So as drivers are driving, there's behaviors that are allocated to that, and that information is coming in. But what we need to focus on, as I said earlier, the exceptions. So we look at a very small percentage of those total events that come through with allocated behaviors, and we have to manage that and monitor it. In terms of predictive analytics, we can really see which drivers are very aggressive. We can see which drivers have a slow response time. We can see which drivers drive too fast behind the car in front of them. So we can analyze all of this and make sure that our training programs are really focused on the behavior that that particular employee is competing with or battling with. So we can push out really risk-based training that's not just blanket for all drivers, and really to focus, because we have many drivers, so over 5,000 drivers in our organization. We need tailor-made risk-specific training to be able to focus on those core competencies that either they lack or that we want to enhance with our drivers.
Sure. And data has become quite an important aspect. Everybody's talking about AI recently, but it's what you receive from it and what you do with the data. For me, it's more about giving you that proactiveness into stopping serious incidents or serious injuries. From a driver perspective, one example would be AI cameras that can tell that a driver is becoming drowsy or falling asleep, and an alert is sent out to the relevant people so that we can call the driver and make sure that they are not falling asleep while driving. Another part for AI, for data, would be from all the near misses or unsafe circumstances being reported in a facility. Where are they concentrated at? Why are they? What's the dominant risk out of them? That, when you look at the data, can tell you in terms of, we can see that a triangle is about to happen in a particular area. And now you can actually change your leadership engagement or visits to that particular place to make sure that you get to analyze that is there a risk of this incident happening or not. So there is ways that we use data. And we actually love data from a shared perspective because it tells us the story. It tells us where we need to focus it. It tells us where the risk might come from. But it's also telling us where the risk has happened and how can you make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Very interesting. Now, some final thoughts from the both of you. How do you see, or where do you see the future of safety going in the logistics space?
So I just want to add on what Leonard said there. I think it was, when we talk about fatigue cameras, we talk about telematics, we also talk about camera systems. I don't think any organization has the benefit of not having this technology right now. I think it's key critical, particularly in an economy that we work in right now. And also in terms of what's happening out there. If we look at the incidents, the accidents there's a phenomenal amount of poor driving within Africa at the moment, and it costs organizations a lot of money. So just in terms of the camera systems, we must always remember that the systems can tell the driver there's a hazard here or there, but they can never tell the driver what to do. And that's why it's so important that our drivers' experience, their competencies and their attitude will train them and show them how to react to those type of risks.
We do have a multitude of organizations in between Safety 1 and Safety 2. By Safety 1, it was more reactive management, and you'll find others are more leaning onto Safety 2, where it's all about being proactive in what you're doing, getting all the data, trying to prevent incidents than being reactive to an incident. And there's an aspect now that's being talked about in the safety atmosphere, that safety differently, which is also proactive, but also now leaning into what differentiates can you do as an organization in accordance to the risk you have, and how do you make sure that AI and tools are working for you to make sure that you're proactive, but at the same time, you reduce risk within the organization. And I think that's the way forward, using your AI tools, using all the predictive analytics that you have, making sure that your employees are competent, not only to use the equipment or the tools they have, but also competent from a safety mindset and from a behavior change. And I think that's where you're going to start seeing those fruits, where people now live safely and also work safe.
I love that. The fact that people need to know the safety elements of life and working in this space. So we really appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much for your insights. We really appreciate that. As we can see through this episode, we've learned that true safety is visible leadership. Thank you so much, Tracy and Leonard, for your valuable insights. We really appreciate your thoughts. And I love what you were saying about living the safety as opposed to it being something that you have to do. So once again, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for our next episode as we dive deeper into the complex world of logistics.